between the final words of the prophet Malachi and the cry of a baby in Bethlehem lay 400 years of divine silence. No voice from heaven, no prophet in the land, no visible hand of God. Just silence echoing across generations. But what if I told you that silence wasn't emptiness? What if those 400 years were pregnant with purpose? During that time, the Jewish people were caught in the grip of foreign empires, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and finally Rome. The sacred Hebrew language faded, replaced by Greek philosophy and pagan rule. The temple was desecrated, prophecies twisted, new sects emerged, Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, each claiming to preserve the truth. And deep in the shadows, faithful scribes clung to ancient scrolls, waiting for a voice that never came, until it did. This is not just a forgotten gap in the Bible. This is the forging of a people, the preparation of a world, the silence before the Word became flesh. So what really happened during those 400 years? Why did God seem silent? And was He ever truly quiet? What happened during the 400 years of silence between the Old and New Testaments? When the final words of the prophet Malachi were written, a curtain seemed to fall on the divine drama of Israel's history. No more prophets, no more thunderous revelations. Heaven grew silent. For 4 long centuries, 400 years, God's voice was not heard through the mouths of His prophets. But was He truly silent? Or was something far deeper unfolding behind the scenes? The period between the Old and New Testaments, often referred to as the Intertestamental Period, is one of the most mysterious and misunderstood chapters in biblical history. While the canon of the Hebrew Scriptures closed with Malachi, history was far from still. Empires rose and fell, cultures collided, and in the shadows of silence, the stage was being meticulously prepared for the arrival of the Messiah. During this time, the Jewish people endured the weight of foreign domination, from the Persians to the Greeks under Alexander the Great, and finally to the iron grip of Rome. Each empire left its mark not just politically, but spiritually. The influence of Hellenism, Greek language, philosophy, and culture penetrated deeply into Jewish life. It was a time of tension, of cultural compromise and fierce resistance. But something else was happening beneath the surface. The longing for a savior intensified. With no prophets to guide them, the Jewish people turned to the Scriptures with greater urgency. The Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes arose, each with different interpretations of the law and different visions for Israel's future. The synagogues became central places of worship and learning as the temple became increasingly corrupted by political agendas. And what of the heavens? Were they truly silent, or were the events unfolding part of a divine whisper, a quiet, sovereign orchestration moving all things toward a single climactic moment? Ancient writings from this period, known as the Apocrypha and other deuterocanonical texts, suggest that God was still at work, speaking in ways that were not canonized, but not necessarily irrelevant. Books like 1 and 2, Maccabees tell stories of heroic resistance, miracles, and divine interventions. The Book of Enoch and other ancient manuscripts reveal a deep spiritual hunger, a yearning to understand the unseen realm, angels, judgment, and the coming Messiah. The Jewish calendar remained full of hope. Every Passover, every Yom Kippur, every prayer in the synagogue echoed with the anticipation that God would speak again, that a deliverer would arise. The silence was not the silence of absence, but the silence of preparation. God's silence was like the stillness before the dawn, and then quietly, it began. A childless couple named Zechariah and Elizabeth encountered an angel in the temple. A young virgin named Mary received a heavenly message. And in a manger in Bethlehem, the silence was shattered forever by the cries of a newborn child. The 400 years of silence were not empty. They were pregnant with purpose. They were the labor pains before the incarnation. Every political upheaval, every philosophical shift, every hunger for truth and hope was part of the divine choreography leading to Jesus Christ, the Word made flesh. Today, many believers fear silence. We panic when God seems quiet. But the story of these 400 years reminds us, silence is not abandonment. Silence is not indifference. Sometimes silence is preparation. Sometimes silence means something greater is coming. What if your own moments of silence from God are not signs that He has left, but signs that He is writing something grand, something eternal? What happened during the 400 years of silence was not a pause in God's story. It was the hidden overture to the greatest symphony of grace the world would ever hear. So now you know, the 400 years of silence between the Old and New Testaments were anything but empty. While prophets no longer shouted from mountaintops, history moved, empires clashed, and souls cried out for redemption. And God? He was there all along, writing a story in whispers, in shadows, and in silence. Perhaps the greatest lesson of this forgotten era is that silence doesn't mean absence. It means preparation. It means something greater is coming. If you've ever felt like God was quiet in your life, maybe, just maybe, you're living your own intertestamental moment, a sacred pause before breakthrough, a holy hush before the heavens open. So don't lose heart. Watch, wait, and stay awake. The word that shattered 400 years of silence is still speaking. Right here, right now. This is A&O Productions, where ancient mysteries come to light. Like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. And tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced a divine silence that later made sense?